Hi, I'm Tyson Franklin, and welcome to this week's episode of Podiatry Marketing. With me, as usual, my good friend, Big Jim Mack. How you doing today, Jim?
Tyson, I'm doing well. I got nothing to complain about. Love and life.
Isn't it good when you got nothing to complain about?
Well, I think I could, but just sometimes you just gotta remember what's important in life, and there's going to be little, ups and downs with each day. It's just kind of how you perceive it and kind of how you take action. So,
Yeah, I remember I read somewhere once and it said, when you complain to somebody, 50% of people don't care, and the other 50% are glad that you've got problems too. So you may as well just if you're going to complain, just keep it to yourself. No one cares. The other 50% are happy that you've got problems.
no, absolutely, everybody's going through something, right? So yeah, just keep on moving forward.
So if anyone's listening to this and you're having problems today, do what the psychologist tell you. Bottle it up. Just keep it to yourself.
This is not the psychology or the mental health podcast. This is the Podiatry Marketing podcast.
This is definitely not the therapy podcast. That's what my wife says to me all the time. She goes, "No, you don't deal with things." I said, "I do deal with things. I bottle it up and I push it deep down." I said, "I just keep pushing it down." Yeah, that's not how you're supposed to do it. Okay, Jim, what are we talking about today?
Yeah, so in the past we've talked kind of in depth about the different types of AI and Chat GPT, different types of ways of the different kind of options people have as far as podiatrists and podiatry staffs of your clinic to use them. But today we're going to get to some more kind of hands-on practical applications. Just kind of go over what I think are kind of the top 5 practical ways you can kind of attract your ideal patients utilizing these different AI. Chatbots or AI kind of tools to really benefit you and your clinic.
I remember way back, it was one of our earlier episodes when we spoke about ChatGPT the first time. You brought that subject up.
Yeah.
And it was relatively new. It was something that you'd brought up. I hadn't even looked at it at that time. And then all of a sudden now, it's like every man and his dog is using it in one way or another. My wife is constantly using it.
Yeah, it's the standalone tools are used a lot. Those were kind of the first ones introduced, but I think you're seeing more and more, whether you use things like Canva or Photoshop or even like email software or even Gmail. These tools are getting incorporated in all types of different software. So kind of getting some practical uses out of them and kind of knowing how you can use them can, and getting familiar with them can help you save time, but also, kind of benefit your practice in different ways.
And I think you got to be careful too with all this AI, because there's a lot of non-practical ways of using it as well. And
Sure.
you can waste a lot of time just going down a rabbit hole, playing with it, sometimes too much. Whereas I think sometimes I did one just this morning, and as an AI program, I said, what would I look like if I hit the gym really hard 7 days a week and took steroids? What would I look like? And it showed me an image of myself. I was really impressed.
I haven't
It'll
seen
never,
that. I
never
haven't seen that
happen.
photo yet. Looking forward to taking a look at it though.
I'll show you at the end of this episode. Okay, so where are we going to start?
So we're going to start with kind of communication tools, right? Like we talked, I touched a little bit on Gmail, but whether it's communicating with patients or maybe your fellow colleagues, refers, ChatGPT and some other tools. There's tools built into Gmail like Genesis. So if you're using, and I'm sure they have it built into Outlook as well, but if you're using different types of email software or maybe even some text message software, it can be a great way to draft some different messages. Will this be kind of messages for follow-ups of patients, appointment reminders, reactivation emails. You don't need to stare at a blank screen anymore, right? You don't just be in obviously you want to make sure that, whatever messages or prompting you put into the AI software is correct when it spits it out. But, I think sometimes people, whether it be, sending that personalized referral letter to another physician or even, maybe even a quick message or email to the patient, post-operative patient or someone you treated with a procedure in your clinic, you're kind of thinking about how much time that's going to take, and staring at a blank screen can, feel like it burns up, 3 to 5 minutes of figuring out how to like best word it. But, by prompting ChatGPT or the AI within Gmail or some of your other email programs, it can really help you kind of lay out a great response or a great email in a much quicker fashion. So I think it's something that, as these tools are maturing, kind of being built into email and text messaging software, utilizing them, prompting them correctly to help you, get rid of that blank page and basically move on to your next task is a very powerful aspect of these AI tools.
And when you're saying prompting them correctly, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, it's exactly. So like how do you talk to the machine or to the AI in a way that will get the desired result you want to get out, right? So let's say, you send me I'm sending you a referral note. You're a PCP, primary care physician, and you send me a patient. So I want to send you a quick note about the patient that you sent me, as far as letting kind of what the treatment plan was, what you found, and kind of keeping you in the loop. There's different, basically, charting softwares now that might even have that ability to email that referring physician within the software itself. But let's say, for example, you didn't do that. As long as you have a HIPAA compliant tool that you're using, you obviously don't putting any kind of identifying information about the patient. But if you have kind of written up note about them, you can put all that stuff into a large language model. It can, basically say, you prompt it by saying, please write a thank you note referral about this patient, give them the diagnosis, what your plan, the treatment plan is, and then it can kind of go over, it'll kind of spit out a result. Hopefully it'll include, the kind of relevant information in that note. And maybe it's going to take a little bit of time and effort for you to get the prompting, asking it the right questions, but over time, the AI will kind of learn what you like in that kind of referral note. And in the future, might just say, send referral note, and then you just copy paste in that patient information that's not identifying to help you make that referral note very, very quickly, as opposed to worrying about having to type out a page or a page and a half of information each time that you want to send a note to a referring physician.
Okay. And these prompts that you create, you then store them away somewhere, so you just pull that out back. The next time you just change the patient information and the diagnosis, and it'll redo it.
Yeah, exactly. You can just like I said, like at the very end of maybe writing the first couple of them, you say like, this has been a, referral to a physician note, where you can actually kind of tell it to remember. So that when you type it, so basically when in the future, when you kind of put in similar type of information, you write in, it's time to write a referral note to Dr. Tyson Franklin about this, this patient. It will do it in a way that's much more time effective than you would if you're trying to cut it together yourself, or someone in your staff do it. Maybe your staff could use the AI as well, but it's just one of those huge time-saving opportunities.
Yeah, I'd like to say before that, my wife has been using it a fair bit, and she used the whole thing she had to write a letter to a certain company.
Sure.
And she just put in a prompt saying, this is who I'm writing to, this is the relationship we have, this is what I'm trying to achieve from a letter.
Mm-hmm.
Can you help me structure it in a way to get this point across, keep it professional? And bang, it printed out something fantastic. The only thing is she always uses my account. And because it knows I'm a podiatrist, it tends to, and it knows me, it tends to put my slant on certain things, which confuses her. I haven't actually explained that to her yet.
Yeah, that's why I think it is important that, like you said, a lot of times these tools will learn the way you want to communicate. So like, for example, obviously I'm writing a lot about podiatry marketing, so I'll sometimes use these tools to brainstorm ideas, or so it's kind of learning the author's voice. So if you have two people that are trying to get different results, from that singular account, you might run into issues. So I think that's a good point to bring up, is that, maybe it's you and your wife, or you and somebody else on your team that maybe work in a different capacity. It may be worthwhile to have separate accounts when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, even because I use a lot with podcasting, taking the transcript, putting it in there, creating show notes, doing different things. But then this morning I was trying something else, and straight away it referred to podcasting as one of the key components of it. And I'm going, no, this has got nothing to do with podcasting. So it's remembered that's what I use it a lot for. And straight away it's putting that into other areas.
Yeah, and sometimes with the prompting as well, you have to tell it, not only do you tell it what to do, you might also have to tell it what not to do, right? Like times when I've tried to make outlines for things, it's putting in things that I don't necessarily want. So kind of making a negative prompt, say, don't include anything about podcasting, might be a way to avoid that moving forward.
Okay. Are there any other tips on this one before we move on to the next point?
No, I think that's pretty solid.
What about no brainstorming catchy subject line? Okay, so what's the next tip?
The next tip is kind of creating, blog content or ideas for blog content. especially if you're someone that maybe has a back catalog of, maybe you've already written 50 to 100 articles yourself. One thing you can do is, and I've done this in the past, is that you can basically have ChatGPT look at your website or look at the blog section of your website to give you ideas about, what are some interesting topics based on when you look at my website or my current blogs, where there's some gaps in the kind of things I've written up. Maybe you want to do sports medicine, and you kind of make it even more niche or more kind of down that subspecialty to make sure it's kind of, you're writing up things that make sense that you want to see more of in your practice. But it's a great way to kind of brainstorm ideas. And like I said, you can even utilize it. Once it learns your own voice, it can almost, speak like you or write content that's similar to you. I don't think you should just, dump in a topic and just like let her write whatever it wants to, right? You definitely have to be more of an editor capacity, but for ideation, for brainstorming, and then for getting kind of a rough draft of maybe a blog topic, it can be a very, very helpful thing.
So I just drew a blank. I was actually listening to you, just going, yeah, that's good stuff.
No, it's all good. It's all good.
Okay. I have a question. When you're talking about the blogs, and you said putting your website in, can ChatGPT can you just put the website link in and it will go and scroll through your website?
Yeah, so like there's different capacities within at least ChatGPT where you can kind of prompt it to search the web. So if you're putting in your website or the kind of the URL related to your blog page, it should be able to go and read that and kind of gets a general sense of how you're, like, what kind of turn of phrase you like to use, what kind of perspective you provide in a lot of those articles, and then it can kind of help you create a similar voice in future articles.
Yeah, because I love what you were saying about find the gap. What is it I'm missing? Because you might say, I want to see more runners, but then it goes to your website and says, well, really good if you wrote a running article, would be fantastic. You haven't written anything about that. So it can actually find the areas that you may need to put a little bit more focus into.
No, absolutely. And along with that, you can sometimes export the kind of the data behind all of the articles you've written as well. So if you're not as geeky as I am, you can go into Google Analytics and pull and see the name of your blog topic, your blog article, how many views or how many clicks each article has gotten. Basically export that as a spreadsheet file, like a CSV, and you can actually upload that to ChatGPT as well, and say if you're looking to drive maybe more traffic or more views, that's another kind of point of data or information that you could put into something like a ChatGPT to say, okay, well, my heel pain article got 5,000 views and is being ranked well on that topic. Maybe it makes sense to so if you're putting that information, maybe you can say, okay, I'd like to have other articles that rank as well. What would you suggest? Be some topics around this that would make sense. So it's another way to kind of let the data and let these large language models with AI kind of give you some ideas that maybe help you get more views, which can maybe lead to more patients making appointments.
Yeah, and they always say that, yeah, having information or gathering data and not using it is a waste of time. So if you've got Google Analytics there attached to your website, then it makes sense to try and take that data, give it to chat, and say, what am I missing? What else can I be working on?
No, exactly. And I think we've talked about it maybe on a previous podcast or maybe just in passing when we're talking before we record, Tyson, is that, I will sometimes, copy paste all the names of the previous podcasts that we've done and get a general sense of like, okay, what have we talked about so far? And maybe what are some areas that we haven't touched on? What are some ways to, like this is maybe the third or fourth episode we've done about AI. So maybe what are some parts of AI or some practical ideas for future shows? So, that's the practical way that I use it and that we've been using it. So that can kind of translate to the type of content that a podiatry clinic should be making as well.
Yeah, well, this is episode 179. So to keep coming up with original topics, I'm impressing ourselves. Like I'm impressed with what we keep coming up with each week. And I actually think the content is getting better.
No, it's definitely been fun. And like I said, like sometimes you have a general topic and then we can kind of drill down and provide more either practical details or just give people an idea. Maybe talking about a topic kind of from a different perspective can sometimes help people understand it better, as opposed to like, if we just kind of explain the basics of what ChatGPT is or AI is, and maybe that's not that way that person learns. Maybe it's by understanding those tasks that you can do on a daily basis, or in your clinic that really helps people kind of have that light bulb moment.
Okay, what's the next tip?
The next tip is all around kind of social media, and kind of, whether you're utilizing LinkedIn or Instagram, or maybe I'm not people are using Snapchat or TikTok, but those tools sometimes can be difficult because it sometimes feels like, okay, what am I going to write about, or how can I tell things in an interesting way? And I think what's interesting about ChatGPT and these AI tools is that maybe, like you said, with the prompting, the message you want to get across. We could say, hey, like, this is the message we want to get across on Twitter or Facebook. Provide me 5 to 10 ideas about how to say this in different ways for different people or different audience, kind of audience or demographics. So maybe you want to let marathon runners know that you treat foot and ankle related issues. So you can prompt it by saying, okay, give me like 10 different types of Facebook posts about topics that marathon runners would like to know about, and kind of tying that into, I don't think a lot of podiatrists use Twitter. It's more of in the tech side of things. Or on Instagram, what types of images or photos plus kind of captions to go along with these Instagram posts. Give me ideas for photos and videos that would maybe get more visibility for my clinic, because like I said, sometimes, it'll write those up for you, but also give you those different perspectives in a way that may connect better with different types of patients.
Yeah, I've been doing that with a program called vidIQ. I think it's vidIQ or vidQI. I think it's vidIQ. And same thing where you will say this is like trying to create an image, say for a YouTube post, for the thumbnail. And you'll say, this is what I'm trying, this is what the video is about. This is the idea I have in my head. So you're typing out what the idea is, and all of a sudden it'll actually put the graphics together. And then you can change the headline. And I've only messed around with it a couple of times, and I've been pretty happy with what it's been. Just haven't always used it. Sometimes I've just gone with my own artwork, because then you can create your own artwork, put it in there, and it'll give you a score out of 100 and whether it thinks it's any good or not.
Yeah.
Sometimes it just tells me I'm absolutely hopeless. But then other times it gives you a big thumbs up and goes, you couldn't improve on that. Just leave it as it is.
Yeah, it's nice to have that kind of feedback, and it just, it saves time. I think one thing that can be done as well is, if sometimes people feel like, oh, I'm not sure what I should talk about on social media. I'm not sure what I should do. And, like I talked about, by utilizing kind of something like ChatGPT, where you put if you have a really good built out website that has the topics and, your local areas and a lot of the kind of core information that's valuable to not only to you, but to your local patients, by going in there and utilizing that as kind of a source of information, you can say, okay, like, help me plan out like the next 12 months of my social media calendar. I want to see more patients that, I want to see more wound care patients, for example, but, I also have these different topics. So look on my website and tell me, what should the theme be for January or February, and how can I break that down into the different weeks of January, or even on if I'm going to put out an Instagram post once a week, what makes sense for that week, to kind of put something out. So you don't have to spend that time and effort. And, some of this stuff can be kind of copy pasted into documents as well. It doesn't, sometimes I find if I just leave stuff on ChatGPT, you can search for it, but it kind of gets lost. But you can utilize kind of the copy paste function of it and kind of put that into a document. Sometimes you can get it to export out into PDFs as well, if that's helpful for you. Or maybe you're trying to create a content calendar. It can maybe create, these, for example, like Google Calendar has its own file type. So maybe something where you could, upload that file type. But there's so many, these tools are very, very powerful. So don't feel like, I think like we talked about previously, kind of, don't just be staring at a blank screen like, oh, what should I be writing about? Utilize these tools to help make suggestions for you, and you can refine it to make sure that it's in line with the kind of care that you want to provide.
Just a question that someone might be thinking.
Sure.
You've got all these different tools out there, just like you've got all these social media platforms. And whenever we've done marketing talks and we've spoken about it, we'll say, you can't be on every platform and do them really well. So pick one and get really good at it, master it. You might be touching on another one. And then when you really master it, then you might put some more attention into another platform. With all the AI tools out there, are you recommending pick one and get really good at using it, using prompts on how you can use it within your business, then start dabbling with the other ones? Or are you saying you should be playing with them all at the same time?
I think you have to kind of like take an inventory of the tools you're currently using and seeing which of those kind of implement some of these AI tools. For example, like I mentioned, if you're running your clinic's email on Gmail, for example, you have your own custom domain. You have some kind of free built-in tools through like Google Gemini, which it might be a good place to kind of start off with to get to kind of know. They do have their own kind of. What you're going to find is that AI kind of happens in two places right now. There's these kind of, I would say, more like general AI tools with Google Gemini, ChatGPT, and then also Anthropic has one called Claude. So these are the
Yeah.
kind of the tools where you can kind of just like go in and brainstorm and just kind of throw in these kind of prompts in there, and you kind of get ideas about things, and then, like I said, kind of maybe copy paste it and get into Google Sheets or something where you just can kind of like have that information and store it in a way that makes sense to you. But also, like I said, you want to take an inventory of what tools you're using, because I know that Tyson and I, we use Descript a lot with our video editing,
Yeah, we
and
do.
that has a lot of really important AI tools in there. Like you mentioned with kind of the media creation and the kind of like the scoring and those things, like understanding, where those AI opportunities and the current tools you're already paying for. But I think having a general tool plus learning those AI capabilities, your current tools, is kind of like the right balance. But you definitely don't want to like I said, if you already have like Gmail, Gemini from Google might be a good place to kind of start off with. Like I use primarily ChatGPT to kind of play around a bit, but I've had other people that I know that use Anthropic's Claude that like it. But I think choosing one of those three kind of general prompting engines or tools is a good place. And then, like I said, like also just learning about what your current tool AI capabilities are will help you kind of do that. But I definitely don't recommend people have like utilize kind of Google Gemini and Claude and ChatGPT, like having accounts, all those, because you'll be spending maybe $60 or $70 a month and not really learning the ins and outs of each of those general programs.
Yeah, no, it does add up. When I look at all the programs that I actually pay for, and I am, because sometimes I'll just pay for the yearly subscription. Works out cheaper, and I'll use it for that year. And at the end of the year, before it runs out, I go, okay, what I'm using it for, can I get that from other platforms that I'm already paying for? And then I chop and change and I dump them on a fairly, not regular basis, but enough to have sort of gone through them. But yeah, it can add up if you don't keep an eye on it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's like streaming platforms. They add up as well. Okay, what's the next one?
The next one is the ability to kind of create personalized, HIPAA compliant, or kind of keeping people's private health information to yourselves, but creating responses to Google reviews. I think a lot of people that want to automate either gathering the reviews or responding to reviews, I think they're missing a great opportunity. Number one, because there's usually a right time to ask for a review. And I think that when people aren't asking at the right time, you're going to get either just only stars or a very generic review. But ChatGPT, kind of putting ChatGPT or some other AI tools into this workflow can be really helpful, because number one, you can kind of like copy paste the review that they made for you, and then basically kind of respond in a way which is very personalized. Also, asking for that personal request. I don't usually utilize, like I said, I don't really utilize AI to kind of request the review from the people. Usually I think a person-to-person interaction is much more, personalized, but also they're going to respond better to that. Like you're saying, like, we're so happy you had a great visit, Mrs. Smith. Would you mind taking time to, let other patients in the community know what a great amount of care you received? So, they're going to write, maybe, you get that paragraph back from them, which is fantastic. But you also want to make sure that you're responding not just like, thanks a lot, Mrs. Smith, like, or, we're so happy that your third hammer toe surgery went so well. Like, you don't want to get to that level of
Yeah.
kind of personalization, but, working with like one of these kind of general tools, like I like to utilize ChatGPT for this, copy pasting their review in, and then obviously prompting ChatGPT to respond in a personal but not sharing any health information manner. Because sometimes they will say that, like, I had an amazing foot surgery with this doctor, or I had a ingrown toenail and they took care of me. You usually want to like not necessarily mention the kind of what you've done. If they mention it, fantastic. But by utilizing AI and seeing what it'll spit out, you're not going to just basically have that copy pasted response or a really short generic response. You want to have a an original personalized response for every review. And ChatGPT and these tools will really help you do that in a great way.
Yeah, because I've seen some pages where they'll get a lot of reviews and they'll say, "Thank you, John. We appreciate your review. Thank you, Jim. We appreciate your Thank you, Tyson. We appreciate your review." And you're like, I don't think they really appreciate it. It sounds very robotic.
Yeah. It sounds robotic, and it just like, it's kind of a boring task that no human really wants to do, right? No one really wants to go in there either. I mean, obviously, sometimes those are automated, but sometimes I've seen people that even don't automate it that are writing responses like that because they feel like they should. And yes, every review needs a response. That's like a no-brainer. But like if you can reply with, and show that you care in a kind of a quick, relatively quickly, within that first 24 hours, the next people that are going to be looking for a podiatrist in your area are going to see that number one, that person wrote a paragraph. Maybe they have the exact same thing that they wanted to see you for. Maybe they had an amazing encounter with you regarding heel pain, and that you responded to them, and you're highly recommended. I think when you see that people actually write down this, I highly recommend this podiatrist, it's much more impactful than a 5-star or just like anything else. That paragraph, that high recommendation means a lot.
Yeah, I've seen some 5 stars. Awesome. You sort of go, okay, that's awesome. And then the response, the reply is, "Thanks." And you go, and you look at it and you say, yeah, was that a friend who just said awesome? Or were they held under duress? You need to do a review right now or you can't leave this building.
Right.
But I do think,
we're handed an iPad like in the treatment room and basically held hostage.
Yeah, fill this in or we'll double your price. So, okay. Anything else before we move on to point number 5 and the final point?
No, I think we'll move on to the final point, and that's that. We talked kind of more about, I would say, patient-centric opportunities and tasks, and the last one is more about your staff and your practice. And obviously, I think people are struggling to find good employees these days. Obviously,
Yeah.
there's still a lot that are out there, but I think some of the things I hear most from people is that like I've gone through a couple of different front desk people, or I'm having trouble tracking people down, but utilizing ChatGPT and some of these AI tools for number one, writing job descriptions, kind of putting it out there to make sure that you're getting kind of the right candidates and asking them the right questions, because anyone can kind of put out a generic job posting, but like what is the bar for your job posting to really attract those high quality candidates that are worth interviewing in your clinic? So kind of giving prompts to ChatGPT to create a job listing for whatever you're trying to hire for can be really beneficial. But not only that, but kind of how your clinic operates. So by letting your standards be known to some of these tools, it'll help you create potential interview questions as well. So when people come in to the clinic, you can ask these questions. You don't have to kind of come up with all these job interview questions on your own. What's important to the life and health of your practice. And by kind of, utilizing ChatGPT to make it more personalized, you can maybe track down and find potential employees that are the right fit for what you're looking for on your staff.
I think especially if you haven't had much success in the past. So if you've done job ads yourself and you haven't had a really good response to it, then I think it's a must that try another way. Use ChatGPT to actually help you write an ad because sometimes it can just be a few words or it's the structure of a sentence that can really drive a point home or actually repel people. And they don't realize it's how they're writing something that people are reading that and going, oh, that's just actually putting me off. Whereas chat or another program could actually just reword it and structure it better.
No, that's a perfect example. I think, whether it's the job listing itself or these interview questions I'm talking about, maybe you already have your list of, these are the ones I've used in the past. Maybe you had to hire somebody a couple of years ago, or these are the questions you've asked, for the last 10 years. But, even taking those questions, copy pasting it into these tools and getting a general sense of like, okay, that worked in, 2010. Like, are there ways to improve upon what I've already done in the past? So it's not necessarily, like I said, you don't have to like ask it to to basically write all their questions for you or to write the listing, but are there ways to craft it and refine it in a way that like you said, will kind of attract and be more kind of go what you're trying to say. Because sometimes, not all of us write all the time. Obviously, writing notes and those kind of things, but attracting, high quality employees is kind of a different skill set than, writing a clinic note. So if you could, if you get some help with that to refine it to, attract that person who's 10 or 15% better than the rest of the potential, people interviewing for the job, that's a really, really important thing for the lifeblood of your practice. So, taking some time to not only, if you don't have those things in place, it can help you develop them. But if you already have them, utilizing them, kind of uploading them, copy pasting them into these tools can help you refine them in ways that maybe can up level your practice a bit.
Yeah, well, I have read some podiatry ads, and you'll look at them, and you just know, like you said, nearly everybody I know has access to ChatGTP. Nearly everybody I know has used it or is using it on a fairly regular basis. So if you've got the tools sitting there, use it, and I think you have more success.
No, could put it better.
Okay, anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
No, I think just, if people have questions about these tools, or should I choose this one, or how do I, incorporate this more into my practice? Tyson and I are here. We both use these tools all the time. So if it can be of any help, or there's, other areas of AI or other areas around ChatGPT you'd like to learn more about, obviously we'll be talking about it more as these tools mature and kind of continue to expand into everything that we're doing these days. But if you have specific questions or ideas for topics you'd like to have us discuss here on the podcast, don't hesitate to reach out. You can just go to podiatry.marketing. We have a form there you can fill out and reach out to us.
Yeah, and if anyone wants to talk to you directly, your actual website is?
My website is podiatrygrowth.com, and they can email me, Jim@podiatrygrowth.
Yeah, if anyone wants to hunt me down, just go to tysonfranklin.com or send me an email, tf@tysonfranklin.com. Very easy to find.
Absolutely.
Okay, Jim, I look forward to talking to you next week.
Sounds great, Tyson.
Okay, see you later. Bye.
Bye now.